I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
I can
great.
hear. Everything is great. So we can start. We're live on Facebook. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
to SUP Talks, the next SUP Talks. Today, we have a special guest from Silicon Valley, Sona Allahverdi. Hello, Sona. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm also great. Sona is actually the VR engineer at Oculus Facebook. So she will talk today about her experience at Oculus and uh, actually the experience about the life in Silicon Valley in US. So of course, she will answer your questions that you can ask in our comment part. Sona, just firstly speak about yourself, your background.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. I'll start with kind of how I discovered computer science, how I discovered virtual reality. So I left Azerbaijan at the age of 18. I came to the States to study at Stanford. Primarily, I was interested at the time in the human brain, perception, and how that interacts with technology, how that is in the context of technology. And part of that was, of course, studying technology. And I took my first computer science class the winter quarter of my freshman year without having done any programming in the past. So I didn't know how much I would enjoy it. And I remember just having my mind blown and realizing how personally for me, how much more academically, mentally stimulating computer science was. I think every engineer has that moment. Yeah, and so after that class, I struggled for a while to see if I still wanted to study the human mind, the social sciences, or to completely become a techie. Finally, I embraced the techie life. I declared computer science, but I didn't discover virtual reality in particular until about a year after that. I was coming home for winter break. It was my father's birthday, and I got him a Samsung Gear VR headset. And I had no idea what virtual reality even was. I just saw it as like a cool electronic gadget. My dad likes gadgets. I like gadgets, so I get it from him. So yeah, so I got him a VR headset, and I remember trying it on and just completely changing the way I saw what my work as a computer scientist would look like in the future. Everyone in the virtual reality, augmented reality industry has a story about how they realized that this is what they wanted to do for their career. And that was definitely my moment. So after that, I once again returned to Stanford, started pursuing classes, started looking for opportunities to learn more about virtual reality. Through seminars, talks, I met a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of them, just because it's the Silicon Valley, Stanford is right next to Facebook, a lot of them happened to work at Oculus. At the time, I didn't want to work for a big tech company. I couldn't go through Stanford without at least once working for a startup. And so I didn't intern at Facebook just yet at that point. I interned for a few startups. I interned for Tesla, and then my junior year summer, I pursued an internship at Oculus. Loved my experience and accepted a full-time offer. And yeah, that's where I am now.
Yeah, that's great. It's like the history of your a short history about your life. How did you decide to be like the engineer at Oculus? So I want to hear some experiences from the Oculus life. What are you doing there actually, and what is your job actually? What other doing in Oculus? And about that.
Yeah. So I work on the headsets, like on our line of headsets. I know you tried it out, but if oh, it's over there. I should have brought it over, but it's like a giant. It's like a headset that you put on, and you're able to experience the virtual reality with it. So that's what I work on. I work more on the like user experience side. I work on settings. So if you've ever put on a headset and gone to settings, that's my domain. You're seeing what I work on. Oculus as a company, I really could not be happier at this point as an engineer, because as I mentioned to you, I wanted to work for a startup. And the reason for that was because I think what happens a lot with bigger companies is that they get so big and there's so many internal politics that it's paralyzing to engineers. Engineers can't work without having their engineering be the primary focus. There's so many hoops to jump through, but that's really not the case at Oculus. I think Oculus has the mentality of a startup with the resources of a giant company, so we can still focus on doing exactly what we want to do and what we're there to do, which is engineering, while at the same time having the support of a big company behind us.
Yeah, great. That's a great answer. So let's talk about the VR, the future of VR, actually, the problems VR faces. So first question is like that. How VR will change the world in the future? How do you think about that? In which spheres it could make some revolutions, some new things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the way I view it is, and there's lots of different articles online as well, but the way I view it myself is that I view virtual reality as revolutionizing and breaking the mold for four specifically fields in my head. The first is entertainment, so how we relax. The second is social life, how we interact in the digital world with others. And then there's education and work. Entertainment is an easy one to understand. Virtual reality has already been revolutionizing how we relax in terms of gaming, in terms of how we watch movies, how we experience events, experience virtual experiences. So yeah, that's an easy one. That's already been happening, and it will keep happening to a better and better degree. How we interact with others in the digital world. This is a big one, and it's something that has definitely been attempted to be solved, but it still doesn't feel natural to interact in the virtual world. When I call my brother on my Oculus headset, it's still not. It doesn't feel like I'm right there with him. And how amazing would it feel if it did feel that way? So there are a lot of companies, big and small, hard at work on making virtual experiences with others more natural, but that would be a big one. I also mentioned education. Virtual reality has been in education and changing education way long before the commercially accessible headsets that we have today have even been available. We see like pilot simulators in the industry way before we even had an Oculus. So that's an obvious example, like teaching a surgeon how to operate without the obvious risks, putting a pilot into the air, or in his mind into the air without the obvious risks that come with it, as well as just having students in a classroom at the time of a pandemic and feeling, having the feeling for them as if they're participating in a real classroom, when that's impossible, is also part of education. And finally, work, the way we collaborate with each other. Of course, now more than ever, once again, we see how much we would need that. And collaborative tools are already available in virtual reality, but still it's being improved. And the more it is improved, the more impact we will see. And that's all just virtual reality. And as amazing as virtual reality is, in my head, it's a stepping stone into augmented and mixed reality. So it's just a doorway to unlock the world of mixed reality. And if any of the viewers don't know, mixed reality is like the real world superimposed with computer generated images. So looking at something and seeing it with addition to more information on the screen or on your headset. So an augmented reality is like whatever virtual reality will do, augmented reality will do tenfold. So it will be a much more dramatic change, and not just education and entertainment and social life and work. It will be a change in how we show up to the world, how we see the world. So yeah.
So we can see that from the big companies, actually, like Facebook, Facebook acquired Oculus very years ago, many years ago. So, and I heard today that Apple also acquired one VR company startup for 1 billion. It's next VR. Yeah, it actually says that VR have a big future because the big companies like Apple, Facebook, and others, they believe in that. So great. But VR has so many problems about its connection, about its size, and etc. So one question: what kind of progress should we expect in VR with the adoption of 5G?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not an expert in 5G, so I'll speak from what I know, from my limited understanding of 5G and what I know about virtual reality. Just kind of like as a thought experiment, because I don't think a lot of studies have been done so far with putting 5G and a VR headset together. So in my mind, what a VR headset with 5G technology, and I say VR, but I mean AR and VR, because VR is amazing, but you don't want to take your virtual reality headset outside. You don't want to walk around on the street with it. You don't want to be fully immersed in Beat Saber when you're walking around on the street. So augmented reality in particular, first of all, if we have a headset combining 5G and an AR headset, that allows for untethered connection. So well, not most, but a lot of VR headsets and AR headsets work using a Wi-Fi connection, which is fine for at-home use, but not great when you want to take it outside. And secondly, and most importantly, 5G provides low latency streaming of data to your headset. So if with the combination of cloud computing, that would allow for a much easier view. So that would allow for the headset to be thinner, first of all, lighter, because the reason why headsets are so bulky is because so much of the processing has to be done on them. So yeah, I would imagine that if 5G technology was to be adopted, that would allow for much lighter, more compact headsets.
This is one of the reasons why it's big and it's uncomfortable for wearing. So the next question is actually connected to this previous one. When should we expect a social acceptable VR sets that everyone can use, everyone can consume in their everyday life?
Yeah, so I think with virtual reality, in my opinion, we're already there, because I believe if you're not going to take your virtual reality headset outside, there are so many, for me, the headsets are really comfortable to wear at home the way they are now. But with augmented reality, that's where the real challenge comes in. And the short answer is I don't know, frankly, when they will be available, but I can tell you that the Silicon Valley is hard at work at making that a closer future, but I honestly don't know.
Okay, actually, this is a real hard question because so you're not you don't have to answer to this question. So, guys, from the our live session from Facebook, just you can ask your questions, and so now I will answer to them. I have another question. What would be your advice to VR community in Azerbaijan? Actually, when we think about the VR, we can just think about also Silicon Valley, Facebook, Oculus, and the big companies. What about the countries like Azerbaijan? What would be your advice to us?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is that keep building, keep developing, and don't listen to people who don't believe in virtual reality and augmented reality. I can't tell you how many times, even at Stanford, even in the Silicon Valley, how many times I felt discouraged because virtual reality was seen as just a gaming thing, or because I'm not as excited I am about the advancements in the gaming industry. I'm not a gamer. I also don't believe in VR for the gaming. So yeah, don't be discouraged. I see the future. I see the way VR will revolutionize the world, augmented reality, virtual reality. You see it if you're working on it. So it's up to us as engineers to bring that future closer and to bridge the gap. So it's our duty to bring VR to the world. So don't get discouraged. And yeah, it's true that people are hard at work in the Silicon Valley, but the good thing about being an engineer is that you can do it from anywhere in the world. So no one is at an advantage. You have the tools that I have available to me. So yeah.
Great inspiration. So now, what about your own opinion about making a new startup? Did you think about that? Do you want to make your own VR startup or AR startup?
Yeah, I've definitely thought of that. And maybe in the future I will. The reason why I joined a big company is so that I can progress the most I can as an engineer. I'm in my 20s. I will never again have the neuroplasticity that I have right now. I'll never again be able to pack my brain full of as much information as I am right now. So my main goal with staying in the Silicon Valley was gaining as much experience as possible, and working on something that I really believe in. And at the moment, the most impact I believe I can have is as an Oculus engineer. And maybe in the future, I will want to start my own thing, but nothing right now. It is truly, I know it's hard to believe when someone working for a big company says, this is what I want to do right now and nothing else interests me, but that is currently where my interests lie.
Yeah, sure. And this is like a common question. So, how do you think the most important things to make a startup, to work for a big companies, the university you studied, like for instance, you studied at Stanford, does it affect mostly, or you should have motivation, you should have enthusiasm? What the main thing to be motivated? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. For a startup, I believe the most important thing is obviously a good idea, but also a good team. I saw, as part of being at Stanford, is seeing so many startups start and fail. And the most common reason why startups fail is because of a team dynamic that doesn't work. So one person wanting 51%, the other person not wanting to accept, majority leadership from the other person, miscommunications. Because when you get to the point where money starts coming in and when you get seed funding, a lot of the time that's where people show their true colors and a lot of the conflicts start. And it definitely helps to have an alumni network of Stanford, but I don't believe that that's a deal breaker. Most engineers that I work with, and also just most successful engineers who have their own startups in the Silicon Valley, are not Stanford grads. They're not Ivy League grads. They're just they're just people with a dream who come and pursue it. So often even you could say that it puts you at a disadvantage, because a lot of Stanford kids feel very comfortable in life. They feel like they have the backing of a giant school. They feel like, oh, I have the alumni network, I have the skill set because I finished Stanford, so I'm good. But I think that mentality is no good for a startup. It's no good. That's not a good mentality to start a company. So yeah, it startup, team, idea, and with yourself, just ambition and drive.
So actually, we have some questions from audience. The first question is from Rafael. He asked that where can we observe the progress you have made for VR headset? Is what you did actually visible? Actually,
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's me personally as an engineer. I'll answer both as an engineer and as the company. Me personally, you can see it. If you have an Oculus Quest, if you have an Oculus Go, even on some Samsung Gear VR devices. If you go to settings, you can see my work. That's what I work on. I'm lucky to have a job that's super visible, so I get when I see feedback online, I can take that specifically for myself. And as a company, we have yearly conferences. Also, if you just get the headset, if you follow the news, yeah, that's a pretty easy way to see. Oculus is very transparent. Facebook as well is pretty well. I won't go into the politics because I feel like then we'll get a lot of comments about that. But I feel like the company is pretty transparent about what they do. So
great answer, very clear. The next question is from Sarhani asking Azerbaijani. Just I want to translate it. He asked about the virtual laboratories and the ways the VR will be used in edtech field. How we will use that.
yeah, so Actually, the one of the first startups that I worked on was a virtual reality ed tech startup. So there are many different ways that VR is currently being used in edtech and will continue to be used in edtech. So the easiest example is it is so much easier for kids to learn when it's fun and when there's more things to remember. So I worked on the startup called Diver EDU, and so part of the startup was creating little simulations, little experiences that are both fun and games and very educational for the kids. So something like one of them was you're transported into a computer chip and you can walk around and see, the different parts of a computer chip, how they interact with each other, what they do. So something like that is very common right now in the VR field, is just finding more fun ways to teach kids different subjects. And as well, and this is not implemented yet, but I haven't heard specifically of startups doing exactly that, but I believe it will come soon, especially given the pandemic is accelerating the need for that. But things like virtual classrooms, ways for children all around the world that may not have access to a classroom, whether that's because it's a pandemic or because they simply don't have a classroom nearby, a way for them to participate in a classroom environment, a way for everyone to be at an equal playing field and not for some kids to be disadvantaged. So yeah, that's a big one too.
Yeah, great. So another question from Osman. He asked that, how to get into VR industry if I am already a software engineer? Do you need an advice degree? What were the average experiences of your VR colleagues that got into VR?
Yeah, of course. So no, you don't need an advanced degree. This was the hardest thing for me to understand. My family always wanted me to. My family prioritized education, and of course, I think in our side of the world, in Azerbaijan, it's a lot more about you earn degrees, and then your degrees show how much you know. That's your proof of how much you know academically. That's very, very different. I mean, look at our founder. Look at Mark Zuckerberg. It's a very different thing in the Silicon Valley, because if you drop out of college in order to pursue an idea that drives you so much that you don't want to even finish a degree, that almost says more about you than someone like me who waited to finish your college to then start working. So absolutely not. You don't need a degree. In fact, during my 4th year, I was admitted to the Stanford Master's program. And I went to, and I was really considering doing it because I wanted to learn more, but also because I still see value in a master's diploma. And I remember going to all of my Oculus contacts, all of the mentors I had made there, and asking all of them, do you think this is something worthy of pursuing? And all of them, not one of them said that, yes, you should do it just to get the paper. All of them said, oh, I'm a college dropout, you don't need a degree. Or, oh, definitely not. You will learn more in 1 year of working than you will at another year or another 2 years of pursuing a master's degree. So you definitely don't need an advanced education. All you need is an idea and drive. Or if you're just willing to work, if you just want to work at a big company, you just need the interviewing process does not discriminate towards people who don't have a college degree.
Yeah, thank you for answering. So we have one interesting question. It's from Rashad. He asked that you're actually spending more and more time in VR, in virtual reality. Don't you feel like losing the feeling of reality after spending that time?
With virtual reality, definitely, I feel sometimes like I love Beat Saber, and have you ever played Super Hot, the game? So Super Hot is
No.
Yeah, Super Hot is such a fun game where time is warped. So the faster you move, the faster time moves. But if you just stand still, time doesn't move. And that's an amazing thing about virtual reality, is that it doesn't just influence what you see, it changes the way you perceive time, the way you perceive space. So definitely, after playing specifically Superhot and other games that kind of warp not just what you see, but how you're feeling, it can really, I'll like start moving slowly in the real world. Like I totally get you. It definitely messes with you.
Yeah, great. Actually, we met with you at Silicon Valley at
Mhm.
Oculus, so I had an experience in. It was Oculus Drift, if I am not mistaken. Oculus Drift S, like that. Yeah, it was a really great experience. I was excited about that, and I want to try it again. So another interesting question. It's actually really a trendy topic. We saw last that the recent pandemic has forced everyone to adopt digital tools such as Zoom and Google Meet. What do you think it would take VR to have a wide adoption in the world?
Yeah, I think a price point, a more affordable price point, it's already great, but yeah, and also a change in the way we perceive virtual reality, and that will come slowly. Um, yeah, that's definitely the most frustrating part, is saying to someone like, oh, you should try out virtual reality, and them saying, oh, I'm not a gamer, because it's not a gaming console anymore. It's a lot more than that. But so yeah, I think a less bulkier headset would also be nice. It's already getting so much better, so it's only going to keep getting better. But a change in mentality. The headsets will just keep getting better, and definitely more content. So if there are any content creators in the VR community, please keep putting out content. There's never enough apps compared to the App Store. There's never enough apps in virtual reality.
Yeah, sure. So the next question is from Elchin. He is asking that maybe it's not your specialty, but it's very interesting for him. What do you think about military application of VR? VR in military of the countries?
Oh yeah, yeah. I It's military is a tough topic, so I will distance myself kind of like emotionally from it, and speak more um, scientifically, objectively. It's really interesting. I read an article recently about like drone controls using virtual reality. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such a strange topic, like having technology fight our wars for us. But yeah, there's definitely adoption in the military. I know a lot of different countries have a lot of their military budget invested in kind of experimental technologies like augmented and virtual reality as well. I know that's not what the audience member asked, but I know of a lot of ways that soldiers with, for example, PTSD, use virtual reality as a therapy method as well. So it's kind of like the opposite side of military, but also really fascinating.
Yeah, great answer. Another quick question, actually, is question like, where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? I think he means, the Osman means that in startup or continue your life in working at Oculus or the companies like that.
Yeah, I'm really not sure about that. I don't have any specific geographic or company plans in 5 years. I just right now I'm trying to grow myself as much as possible as a specialist, as a programmer. I know the startup scene in Azerbaijan is growing, and more than ever. Like when I met you, when you came to Oculus and I hosted you there, it was amazing to hear about what you guys are doing over there. So and I would only be happy to return if I feel like I could make a lot of impact. But yeah, right now I'm just going towards where I can learn as much as possible and where I can have as much impact as possible.
So fastly moving to the next question. When do you think the VR reached a level when it's possible to create things like Ready Player One movie?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask. So there is something that's currently, I'm assuming that the audience member read the book. So there's the Oasis in Ready Player One, and Facebook is working on the Horizon, which is a very similar concept to what the Oasis is. It's not going to be from 0 to 100. It's not going to be completely the Oasis. It's not going to be a complete replica of Ready Player One. And Ready Player One is a fiction book, so it will never be that exciting. It's not never going to be a thriller action movie, but I think it's closer than we think it is. I think it's much closer than we think it is.
Yeah, and I hope also we are closer. So the next interesting question from Elnara, she asked that, can you give more information on mixed reality? Any successful cases on healthcare?
Oh, I don't know anything about healthcare in particular. I'm sure, and I think the reason why is because, so on mixed reality, so there's a company in the Silicon Valley that's the most like prominent case of a startup, augmented / mixed reality startup. It's called Magic Leap, and they recently put out a headset that was a mixed reality headset. And I don't know about everyone else, but to me, it was really kind of, it wasn't the most exciting thing. It looked cool. It sounded incredible. They received a lot of seed funding for it, but putting it on was kind of like, okay, so it just feels like I'm looking through a screen with stuff projected onto it into the real world. There were some latency issues on the headset that I had tried. So, and that's just like my personal experience with it. So augmented reality is where virtual reality was about 10 years ago. There's still so much work to be done there. I think once it's still an experimental kind of entertainment platform, once it develops from that, I'm sure there will be implications that I'm sure there will be applications on healthcare, once again, education, everything else. But right now, unfortunately, it's just not there, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for answering the questions. So I think it could be the last question, and it's like the common question to you. The question from Rafael, he asked that, what do you think about the future of VR, and how far away are we from that point?
Yeah, thank you, Rafael. It's hard to tell exactly what point people are referring to when they say that, because I think a lot of people put on a VR headset and all they can see is that it's great, but it's not completely natural. It's not a seamless experience. Once again, it's hard to say because, in my opinion, I think as a way to relax and as a way to maybe not in the most natural way, but at least in a way to connect with others, and as a tool for building onto it in terms of healthcare, therapy, military, all of that. VR is already a great tool. So I think every year there's more and more developments. So I think it will only keep getting better. But with augmented reality, it is really hard to tell. As I said, there's everyone in the Silicon Valley, not everyone, but a lot of people in the Silicon Valley are working on actively solving this problem. I'm sure with the developments in 5G, with just more technological advancements, I'm sure we'll be able to get there faster, but it's hard to tell. I don't want to give an estimate because I remember 4 years ago, someone told me that in 4 years, we would all have AR headsets. And I was like, oh, great. That sounds awesome. I'll mark my calendar. But it's that hard to tell that some things happen much faster than you think they would. But a lot of the time, things happen a lot slower.
Yeah, great. So I think this is the last question. So this is interesting. So I think I should ask that from you. Not to be market viable, usually startups are made to meet some individual market need. What the core market need for VR? Could you give some specific examples about that?
Yeah. So I don't. Yeah, sure. I think there are. It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like asking the market need for telephones, because it's another device that has a lot more capabilities than just one. So at the beginning, it was entertainment. It transitioned into a lot more. Like right now, games like Rec Room, VR chat. There's a lot of need for like the social aspect of being in VR as well. And like with every technology, once it gets to a certain point, a lot of other industries see value in it and keep investing in it and implementing it to their own needs. So maybe it started, and this is just from personal experience, I don't have any like specific data on that, but it feels like it started as a gaming console. It started as like a niche thing for people who like experimental technology, and transitioned into more and different fields. But I will say, and I mentioned this, there were cases of virtual reality long before what we have now. As I said, I mentioned the example of a pilot. It's incredible to look back in history and see that virtual reality was used in, not the way that we would define it today, not computer generated images on the fly, but virtual reality was used in many ways for education, and for therapy and, psychological experiences long before what we have now. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Sona. I really appreciate that you accepted our invitation and joined us and shared your experience about the VR in our community. We have some VR startups here, but it's really in the low stage. So they need experience, they need some advices. Guys, you can contact to Sona, ask some questions. We have her on social media and other platforms. So thank you everyone for watching us. See you at our next talks. So thank you very much, Sona, again, and